In this video, we're going to be talking about the production possibilities frontier and how it nicely illustrates the concept of opportunity cost. Now, opportunity cost is something that we've talked about in the last chapter, where we might want to think about what sort of a trade-off exists between producing or getting more of one good in terms of sacrificing the other. Okay, so this is what we will illustrate in this video, and let's go back to the same example that we had with iPads and masks. Okay, so again we have iPads which are represented on the x-axis. The production is highlighted in this table, and then mask production is on the y-axis, and again the table highlights the different values that we had obtained earlier. Okay, so you want to revisit the previous videos if you are uncomfortable with how we got to these values. Now, notice that if we move along the production possibilities frontier from point A to point E, what's really going on here? At point A, we are producing 500 iPads, but we're going to point E where we are producing nothing in terms of iPads. Okay, and all of the resources are going towards mass production. So you can see that as we move from point A to E, iPad production is going to 0, and mask production is rising from 0 to 5,000. Okay, so what does this tell us? This tells us that moving along a PPF, okay, whether you went from point E to A or point A to E, moving along a PPF from one point to another involves shifting resources from the production of one good to another. Okay, and so what we are seeing here is that we are facing a trade-off between iPad production and mask production. So getting more of masks requires us to give up some numbers of iPads. Okay, and so what we want to do as economists is try to quantify if we want to produce more masks, or if we want to produce, let's put it the other way, if we want to produce more iPads, how many masks should we be giving up? So let's make this question even more simple and say, in order to produce one iPad, how many masks or boxes of masks should we give up? In other words, we are trying to calculate the opportunity cost of producing one iPad. Okay, so this is the question, and we have to solve it. Now, we're given all this data, we're given this graph. We can calculate something like this, which is the slope. So the opportunity cost of producing X can be just given by the slope of the production possibilities frontier, which is delta y over delta x. Okay, and you can write this as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now some of you might be able to see the graph and say, well, I can calculate rise over run, and that's fine as well. Okay, you can get to a quick answer about the slope, and then you can calculate it that way. But what if you weren't given that graph? You would have to pick 2 points from these 5 points, or you would have to at least get to the point where you have 2 points and then calculate the slope. So let's take 2 points. I like the zeros, right? So let's take points A and E. You can take points B and D if you like, or any 2 points really. And let's call A x1, y1, and point E x2, y2. Okay? So let's write down what y2 minus y1 is. So y2 is given by our point E, which is 5,000. So 5,000 minus, we have a 0, y1 is 0, divided by x2, which is 0. Okay, so 0 minus x1, which is 500. Okay, so we get to a point like, we get to this ratio, which is negative 10 over 1. Now the negative sign represents the slope of the negative, or the downward slope of the production possibilities frontier. Okay, so the negative sign represents the downward slope, but also the fact that in order to produce more of X, you have to give up Y. Okay. And what does the number tell us? Okay, so the number is telling us that in order to produce, again, going back to our question, in order to produce one iPad, which is the denominator, which is X, okay? So the change in X is 1. In order to produce one more X, we must give up 10 units of Y. Okay, so you're basically interpreting this as the slope. Delta Y over delta X, which is the slope, is negative 10 over 1. Okay, so if you just want to take this and interpret this, this is saying that in order to produce one iPad, we should give up 10 boxes of masks, or we should give up the production of 10 boxes of masks. Okay, so you might want to write this down. To produce one iPad, we must give up 10, or give up the production of 10 boxes of masks. You might want to invert this and also write this in terms of delta. What is delta X over delta Y? Okay, so delta X over delta Y is negative 1 over 10. Okay, which is to say that if we wanted to produce 10 boxes of masks, we would have to give up one iPad. Okay, so you can interpret this in many ways. Okay, but the slope, if iPads are on the x-axis and masks are on the y-axis, this is the interpretation that you want to roll with.